Hi. In this video, I wanted to give some advice for freshers when it comes to passing job interviews. Okay, advice number one, your best story. Okay, your best story, should that be necessarily a non-school project, or could it also be a school project, right? Because I found that many times freshers would prefer experiences from internships simply because that's considered as a work experience, even though in many occasions, diving deeper into the candidate's experiences, I found out that their school projects were actually far more complicated and would sell even better as their best stories. Okay, so should you prefer internship experience versus school projects? And the answer to this is no. Actually, whatever you consider the best achievement you've had, whether it was in school or as an intern, you should use in a job interview. Or if you're still doubtful that this would be the case, if you're still a little bit biased towards your experience as an intern or other types of experiences, you could offer your interviewer a choice. Hey, interviewer, I have these two experiences. One is from school, which I find was quite challenging and would sell myself on my subject expertise very well. And the other one was while working as an intern. I let them choose which one they would prefer the best. But long story short, your best story, think about what is your best story, because most of the time freshers will struggle finding their best story going into a job interview. Second piece of advice I'd like to talk about here would be with respect to the quantity versus quality approach. So many freshers like spending time on finding as many stories as possible to build their story bank. For example, some of you have a target to find 20 stories, okay, versus a qualitative approach, which is an advantage for a fresher because the expectations aren't much for you as a fresher in a job interview. So you could end up with a story bank of 5 stories, right? On the condition they're the good ones, right? So 5 stories could be well enough for a fresher going to a job interview, on the condition you really spend the time to communicate those stories extremely well on your strength and on your subject matter expertise, right? So again, you as a fresher could get away with 5 stories when compared to 20 stories for other, 30 stories for other roles, on the condition you really polish them up well. Okay, third piece of advice here would be freshers, and not only freshers, would struggle to answer conflict questions in job interviews. Tell me about the time when you had a conflict inside your team. Okay, and the reasons why freshers would struggle would be something on lines of, Dan, I've always worked remotely, I never had any conflicts, or, Dan, I'm a very likable person, I don't like having conflicts, I like, listening to other people, but I don't have conflicts to share. Okay, when in fact, we all have conflicts. It's impossible we don't have conflicts. It's just that you have to understand that when someone asks you for a conflict in a job interview, they're asking you for a functional conflict, a difference of opinion on your subject matter expertise. Okay, so if you're a developer, maybe you have a difference in opinion on how to refactor some code, or maybe you have a difference of opinion over some algorithm. I'm sure this is a very common occurrence. It's impossible not to have this, regardless if you're working remotely or not. Okay, however, people who've worked remotely might not qualify these questions, might not really understand what the interviewer is actually looking for. So, long story short, when asked questions around conflict, you should come up with a specific example of a functional conflict that happened, which you resolved. Eventually came up with some data, you listened to the other part of the thing, maybe it was a compromise, but ultimately it was a success story. Right, so this was point number 3. Point number 4, and this is an important one. I understand, expectations cannot be too high here, but learn to think for yourself and take the best possible decisions, both before preparing a job interview and during your job interview. To give some examples here, I recently had someone whom I role-played, why do you want to work for this company? And I said something on lines of, well, you know what, I'm not sure I want to join you as of yet because, I'm just here to learn about my expertise and whether the type of experience I have could be mutually beneficial. And it was obvious to me he was not the type of candidate who could afford saying these things. He had no experience, he wasn't someone exceptional, he was applying for an exceptional company. So then ask, okay, but why would you use this? Well, Dan, you said this in this video, you know, that's a possible way to answer these questions. Okay, so you should reason, you should think for yourself what type of answer best suits your needs. Okay, can you afford answering questions this way? In this case, not many people do, you know, you cannot say, I'm not sure I want to join you as of yet. But if you do, then congrats to you, you know, it does happen sometimes. Or another example here. If someone says, or I said in some video, that the ideal length of your answer should be around 2 minutes, you should try to understand why I said that. Because I don't remember saying 2 minutes, but I do remember other people saying 2 minutes. But the reason for these limits on the answers would be to help you to avoid rambling, to try to be eventually more concise in a bid, you know, to improve your interview answers. Now, this being said, I could also tell you that in the same way I might have said 2-minute answers work best. Now I will tell you that I advise many people to give long, convincing first answers, because this is what I could correlate with interview success. Of course, if you give long, convincing first answer, you might be rambling, okay? But you should understand the type of advice and the purpose of the advice being given, and make the best decision for yourself, for you as a candidate. Okay, for your unique situations, for you as a fresher, right? So don't take the bite with these things. And maybe just one more here: rewarding answers using AI. If you think about it, it makes you feel really good that, you know, AI is doing the work for you. Now, if you'll go a bit further and try to reason a bit from the so-called first principles, you'll understand that it's you're fighting a losing battle if you're preparing your story bank using AI, or rewarding your stories using AI, because you're never going to be able to speak like that during a job interview. So basically, it's a waste of time. Okay, so try to think for yourself, because the decisions that you're going to take will improve your ability to take the right decisions also during your job interview. And point number 5 here, last but definitely certainly not least, would be, when asked an interview question, don't jump right into answering it. Take your time, think about it, decide what is the best approach to answer that question. Because even if you only have 5 stories in your story bank, you'll be surprised of the number of candidates who will answer with their second or third best story just because they hurried. Okay, there's many other combinations of mistakes, because people are too reactive answering questions in job interviews. So my advice would be to take your time, even take 20 seconds, 30 seconds, ask for more time if you need, take time to tell them you're writing the question down so you won't forget the question. But take your time to answer this, because you will improve your ability to make the right decisions for yourself when it comes to giving the best possible answers during the job interviews. Remember the previous advice that was prior to your job interview. You know, learn to cut through the noise to understand what type of advice best suits your needs. Same way, during a job interview, avoid being reactive and start being proactive, and listen carefully to the question you're asked, because it's far more important than most people realize. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.